Wednesday. I hope you've had a great start to your week. Welcome to the Pretty Talk Couch Sessions, Ladies Edition. As you can see, I have some beauties with me today in the persons of my mother, Miss Davis. Say hello to the people.
Hello.
And I have my grandma.
Hi.
And MEP. And so, yeah, for those of you that are trying to do the math, don't do it. Okay? We're just going to say that right now. Maybe one day we'll do a whole thing where, like, you understand it. But, yeah, it's the family tree. And we are a blended family. I'm really happy to have them here. And so this video, we're really going to just talk about the importance of relationships between women and young ladies.
I feel that it is very important to have relationships with younger women in general. I guess my most time spent is at work at the daycare, and I see a lot of young women with a lot of children and no husband or no man in their lives to help. So I do feel that a lot of times, you know, when I can have conversations with them, if they're upset or depressed about something, you know, just to try to give them some encouragement. I was a single mother like a lot of the young women that I see. I was young, and I needed guidance too. And I did have a mother that helped me immensely. And, you know, I had friends that helped. I had siblings that helped me, both spiritually and naturally. But a lot of times, you know, it's just a kind word or a kind hug, you know, something that they're going to remember when that day is going rough for them. Now, when it comes to people in my immediate circle, I don't always feel that. I think I get sidebar conversations a lot of times that I come in on the amigos when they're talking, and then I can hear what's going on and I can give my comment with them. But at the same time, you know, I feel it is important that I listen in on what they're talking about and hear, you know, how they feel about things. But then in the same sense, I'm older, and a lot of times, you know, I don't hate to say I don't care, but I mean, a lot of times I'm just tired and I don't want to hear it, or I've heard it enough in my life, my 72 years, and you know, they just need to get it together. But I know that that's not going to happen without somebody helping guide them through the way. And that could come from how I was brought up. I mean, you get it together and you do what you're supposed to do. And that's what we did. And we made it, you know, this far in life. So, you know, like I said before, I think it is important, and I wish I could be better at talking to some of the young women, because I mean, I got a lot of stories.
Stories are essentially the way that, you know, we share knowledge and ideas and culture. So it's incredibly important to share your stories with people who come before you, and for them to share their stories with you, because, you know, how else do we learn? So it, I guess, depends on whose story it is. Some people's stories tend to maybe, I don't want to say hinder you, that's not really the right word, but sometimes they might make things a little bit tougher for you. So I think even in sharing stories, you have to be very conscious of kind of where you stand with something. Actually, one of the things that I was thinking about for this is that I used to compare myself a lot to my mom. Like, I specifically wanted to be just like her, but you can't do that. That's not really how that works. You have to be your own person. And so it was really hard for me in the beginning, like as a younger kid, because when I couldn't do certain things, or when I did certain things in the way that best suited me, it felt like I wasn't doing it correctly, but that's not how that works. You do things the way that they best suit you. And so now I'm a huge advocate for that. I'm very much, if you have to do it in the weirdest way possible, if that's the way that works best for you, then that's just the way that you do it. And we talk all the time about we are a lot alike, but we're not the same person. And the way that we see things is very different. And the way that we operate is very different. But I think that's really important too. My mom is a very type A person. She's a planner. She's very good at things like that. And I'm the exact opposite. Now, whether I'm like that because she isn't, or I just decided to be that way, I don't know. But it works. And I think it takes a person who's got a little more spontaneity or a little more chaos, if you will, and someone who is very linear and very good at keeping things planned and focused. So I think if you have someone that you can share stories with and you have someone that will listen to you, those relationships are invaluable. And if you don't have someone, I wouldn't get too discouraged. There are other people, probably that you haven't met yet, that are very willing to take you in, are very willing to spend time with you. It's sometimes hard to find those people, and it may be difficult to cultivate those relationships, but once you find them, it's good to do whatever you can to keep them close, to work really hard at them, because without those community connections, without those interpersonal connections, we can get really lost and things just become exponentially harder. And for those people that struggle with interpersonal relationships, like I said, there's always a balance. So there will be someone out there older than you, possibly the same age as you, probably even younger than you. Because sometimes it isn't just about a younger person sharing their story with someone older. Sometimes it's about you helping someone under you, like bring them up. Because all of these relationships are very circular. They all exist together. Everything is kind of woven, into one story in a way. So I think it's important to share with everyone all of the time, but I think me and Jasmine, are precisely the way we are because we've been raised by very, very strong, very independent, very powerful women. And typically you don't get to be a powerful woman without having some type of influence from someone else just as powerful.
Well, I think it's incredibly important, these interactions, because what I have found, I have experienced personal growth in myself, and I find that it is necessary for me to talk to younger women. And the reason why it's so important to me is because I want to keep a finger on the pulse of what is actually going on, and I don't always know everything that's happening. And so by talking to these young women, and I would say roughly like 20 to 30 years younger than me, I get a better idea of how we are different as well as how we are similar. And you find there are always more similarities in between people than differences per se. However, there are very specific ways that these generations are different. And I need to know what those differences are. I think we all need to know what those differences are so that we can speak as if you have some kind of sense when you're talking to them, and to know what is going on spiritually, naturally, in all different sorts of ways. Because if you don't know, you can't relate. And even though we can't relate to everything, I try to do my best to be able to understand. Now with my own daughter, we've butt heads every once in a while, but not very much, because I try to remain as open as possible when she starts telling me things, sometimes about myself, sometimes just about her generation. And I will also say I am incredibly impressed with this generation, the 30s, those who are in their late 20s, early 30s, around those ages, and maybe even a little older, because in speaking with them, I found out that we were, of course, when I came up, it was just, you just did what you were told. You did what you were supposed to do. You did it all of the time for the most part. I was a little bit of a rebel, but not a lot. But these generations know who they are. They don't just go along with the status quo because it's the status quo. They are very thoughtful. They are very educated. They reason things out, and they can tell you why they feel the way that they feel. And so it's not just, you're not just going to dictate to these young women. You are going to have a valid reason why you're saying what you are saying. And it's going to have to be measured against what they know and against history and against current events and against everything that's out there. And they make a lot of sense. So I appreciate them in my life. And I appreciate the fact that they are still here and we're still here so that we can. And you find, there was a time when people didn't think that you could be friends per se with people who were that much younger than you. Yes, you can. And you can be colleagues, and you can have respectful relationships that teach both of you. And I think that that's the greatest thing that comes out of this.
I think it's important that multi-generational conversations take place between women and young women, because how else are we able to navigate the world and actually be prepared for what's coming? And whether you're young or whether you're more mature, right? You need to know what comes ahead of you. You need to know what people are going through behind you or those that are younger than you, so that we can be helpful one to another, so that we can encourage each other, so that we don't have to make the same mistakes. It's so important that we share so that the generations before us can do better. I'm learning a lot about wealth and just how you manage it. And wealth is not just in finances. Wealth is also in life and experience. And one thing about being wealthy is you are doing what you do for the generations coming behind you, for the legacy behind you. And so I heard Priscilla Schreier say one time, there is always a woman ahead of you and there is always a woman behind you. And we all need each other so that we can move forward and grow better together. That's what this whole series for this month is going to be about. So you're going to see new and different faces on the couch with me every week. And today we're going to really talk about the importance of friendships and how they've been to us, and then also just as mothers and daughters, how our relationships have evolved, because it's so important that we develop those relationships and nurture those relationships and take care of them. So the first question for everyone is really how important have your female friendships been to you to help you navigate through life? You want to start, Emmy?
Sure. Well, I make friends pretty easily, but I've had essentially the same best friends since birth.
Same.
And they're the most incredible people I know. They've been through a lot. And when we were younger, a lot of the times I felt like this is a crazy thought, but this is what I thought, that I was like, I didn't have the right to be upset or feel bad about really anything because I knew what they were going through. And now I know that that was not valid because everybody goes through things. However, it was really important for me to keep a framework on exactly how privileged I was and compared to a lot of what they went through. And what I appreciate about them is they never looked down on me about that. They never held that against me. And because of the way that I was raised, we give back. So we've always had a sort of symbiotic relationship where we are all very different people and we all feel things differently and express ourselves differently and interact with each other differently. No two of our relationships in my friend group are the same, but I think that that's really wonderful, and I've learned so much from them. And I think it's important to acknowledge and give your friends flowers, but it is also important to hold them accountable. And it's also important that you have friends that hold you accountable. If your friend group is exactly the same as you, no one's learning, no one's growing, because you're all just doing the same thing all the time. When you have friends that are not just like you, it's a much richer experience. And I tend to attract people who are in ways exact opposites of me. I'm very much an ENFP, highly extroverted, and a lot of my friends are introverts. And in the beginning, I felt really clunky and obnoxious and awkward about being that way. But I realize now that I kind of was a shield for them, and not in a bad way. It's just I don't get really embarrassed easily, and I don't get uncomfortable in situations. So people who are a little more reserved, a little more quiet, who have a harder time adjusting and adapting, you get someone who's really loud and obnoxious, and then there's no attention on you because they're probably like dancing around somewhere or like doing cartwheels or being, distracting or something like that. But I really appreciate them. Like I said, they're some of the best people that I know, and I'm really grateful that I've gotten almost 30 years of having the same set of friends. So
I will agree. I'll jump in. That's a great place because my entire life, I've pretty much had the same best friends. And we all joke that our mothers were very mean when we were little. Because, can I go to this person's house? No. Can I go to the sleepover? No. My first sleepover, I was like 14, okay? It was pitiful. But now I get it, and I'm very grateful because we are all very different people. And I am definitely one of the extroverts in that group. But they challenge me and they push me, and I see even now where we are in life, how we challenge each other to keep going for better, but also to take rest and to give ourselves grace, especially when you're in your mid-30s. You feel like I should be a certain place or I should be here, and I really love the fact that we all have given each other the space to be like, no, you don't. Be right where you're at. There's a reason why God has you where you are at the time you are, and you need friends that can speak life into you in those really tough times. And then also sometimes just let you be, when I say loose, I don't mean out here being nasty. I mean, just be like, whatever, like, this is how I feel, and I don't want to talk about it, You gotta have friends to let you do that too. Because sometimes you just need to process and then come back to a thing. And I have really great friends where we can cry and be racked at the same time, and then talk to Jesus about it all. So I love them. So, Mommy.
My friends are very few. I said my friends are very few as far as friends. I mean, I make friends. I've worked for 50 years, so I have people in my first job that I considered my friends. And I guess maybe not deep friends, but friends that we hung around with in good days with. And then I have friends that I've known ever since for like over 60 years. And so I consider at least two of those people to be very good friends because we can pick up and talk no matter where we're at, what we're doing. We can go back to when we were 10, when we were 12. And that's a blessing to me to be able to say, after 60 plus years that you still are friends with this person, and you can go back and laugh about how you have evolved from when you were, 10, 20s, 30s, and just be grateful, for those things.
Cause you was hot in the trap before you knew Jesus, wasn't you?
I was in 20s, 30s. That was a good time.
Yes.
She was a bad man, a Jeremiah. Was one of those people on Barbara?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah.
And Brenda Gibbons.
And Brenda Gibbons,
Yes,
yeah.
because Brenda, I've known her since I was 10.
Yeah.
And that's been, that's probably the person that has known me in my wildest days.
I'm glad you said
So,
that.
yes, because she was the one that, I was out with most of the time. And she's quite different from me. She's a little eccentric. But, but we still, like to do the same kinds of things and stuff, so. But, I have,
Evolve.
Yes. And there's another one to my left that's been a friend for, I can't remember. 83, yeah, it's been almost 40 years.
40 years.
Yes,
Wow.
and that, this friendship has a whole another story to it too, but it's been, that's been a good friend and a good, I think I've been a good friend to that person. That person's been a good friend to me, and we have a lot of little funny stories from the beginning too, because I remember we went in the same hotel room and we were asked, y'all gonna fight each other, y'all gonna be okay?
I remember that.
Yeah, y'all gonna get a fight tonight or whatever, but I was out with Morris, so she was waiting up for me when I got back.
She said, you better not be being fast.
I didn't remember that part.
No, she didn't say that.
No, I didn't remember her being out.
Oh.
I don't remember.
Yeah, we went to eat, and all y'all went to bed.
I didn't remember.
What about you, Grammaw?
Well, I have always had girlfriends, but in my case, it would be 2 to 3. I mean, from the time I was a kid, I had 2 to 3 really good friends because I've never been a big friend person, but 2 to 3 friends. And so I've always had, girls in my life, women in my life, somebody I could talk to, some best friends, 2 to 3, like I said. Because I'm a semi-introvert, and it's taken me a long time to really open up as much as I have now. I was never a hugger. Now I like to hug people because I know, as your mom said, people need that. Sometimes that's all they need. They just need a hug. And so, and I have a feeling I'm gonna end up crying, but
It's okay.
It's like, oh God, okay.
Couch section.
So anyway, I've evolved like that, and at this particular stage in my life, if I did not have the women friends I have, I don't think I would really make it, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't put them above God, that's not what I mean, but you do need people that you can be comfortable with, that you can be safe with, and that's the important thing, because I never really did trust people like that a whole bunch, and you can't trust everybody with everything about yourself. But I will have to say, COVID brought a lot of good things to light as far as, you weren't going as many places, you weren't doing as many things, and as opposed to, because from the moment I married the person that I married, you're always like in the public to some degree, if you understand what I'm saying. It's always about somebody looking at you, somebody watching you, whatever the case might be. I know a lot of people, and this is kind of strange coming up in this conversation, but a lot of people had a lot to say, they just couldn't make it. COVID was something that took me away from my routine. It allowed me, and I call it God giving me the space to actually deal with him more and to get closer, to develop more of a relationship that he knew that I was going to need now. And so that includes the women in my life. I think I'm closer to them than I've ever been. And as your mom said, the one over to my right. But we were never going to beat each other up, I don't know.
Girl, fine!
God blessed us from the very beginning, and that's a long story, and I'm not even going to go into that, but God blessed us from the very beginning.
Really crying.
I would. Yes, but God blessed us from the very beginning. And I've always also had older friends. I was 10 years old and had an 80-year-old friend. I was in the AME church, and she was just I love this lady, and so my mom would take me to visit her and all that sort of thing. Her name was Artie Hilton, and so I've just always, because I've always been an old kid. I've always been an old soul.
Yeah.
So I would sit and read the paper and talk to old people. I mean, that's just the way I've always been. That's the way I've always been.
And I think that's so funny, because while she said, she's always been an old person, I think all of us, in a way, have been, because mom is the oldest, so she carried a lot of that. I'm the oldest, responsibility, attitude, all of it. And I think Aaron and I, we got stories for days too. But we were old souls as little children. My dad would always say, old people would just be like, can we take her to lunch? Can we take her out? Because I just had an old spirit. So I think that,
it's not a very PC way to say it, but I genuinely like elders, older people, however you say it. I've always been comfortable and I enjoy talking to them. And when I worked retail, whenever an older person came to the store, I was immediately like, I'll take care of it. Whether it was older men, older women, I just sometimes it's difficult because they are set in their ways, but it's so much fun when you can get them to respond to you with a little bit of light and and if you entertain them, they'll immediately like you. So
and they're funny.
And they're funny. They're
And
so funny.
I think that's so. It leads right into the next question in a great way, right? Because as mothers and daughters, we've shared a special bond and experience that only really the four of us can explain in our way. And Grandma can tell you, I struggled a lot growing up in understanding why me, God? Why was I born in the circumstances in which I was born? And now I'm just so grateful, right? And so this next question really is, as mothers and daughters, how has your relationship evolved? And so I don't know, who wants to go first? Because we can kind of talk back and forth with each other, but...
I talked a little bit about it in the beginning, and whenever you see my individual portion, you'll hear a little bit about that. But basically, when I was younger, I was a lot like Jasmine in that I struggled with myself more than anything. I really didn't like myself as a kid because I wasn't comfortable with having the amount of energy I had and with having the opinions that I had, but I've always had them. So I didn't know how to express them, and I thought that people wouldn't like me. And like I said, in the ENFP, all we want is for people to like us. Now, I really don't care whether you like me or not, because I'm gonna say whatever it is I have to say. It's your business if you don't like me. But I wanted to be just like her, because she's the smartest, most, capable person. I knew literally, I was like, my mom was the smartest person I know, like nobody's smarter than my mom. So I sometimes tried to do things exactly like her because I was like, well, if she did it, or if this is how she does it, then it'll work for me, right? But it doesn't. It didn't work that way. And one of my biggest, what felt like failures is that I couldn't be exactly like her. And so at first I thought that would make her upset. I thought if you can't follow exactly the way that they are, then that's gonna be a problem. And I remember one day we just had a conversation and I was like, I'm not you. I was like, I can't be you. I was like, I am grateful for everything you taught me and the way that I've grown up and our conversations and the way that we deal with each other, but we are distinctly different people. I mean, when it comes down to the foundation of everything, we are very opposite ends of the spectrum. But I think the most important thing, at least for me, is understanding where she comes from. And in return, I appreciate her understanding or trying to understand where I'm coming from. And that isn't easy. It can't possibly be easy because you don't exist as the other person. But it would be incredibly inappropriate for me, incredibly ignorant of me to invalidate or disregard her experiences simply because they aren't mine. But it's the same. It would be the same for her to disregard my experiences simply because I'm younger, because because I don't think the same way she does or act the same way she does. So it took a lot of navigating. I will say that. It took a lot of navigating as I was younger. But now we just talk about it. There's not really anything that we don't talk about. And there are times we talk so much and we are so close that sometimes I have to be like, Mom, I am an adult. I am literally a
Snacks.
fully grown adult. Like, I don't need you to call a dentist for me. I don't need you to do. I can do it myself. Thank you.
To go through my toiletry list.
She'll literally be like, I'll be on the phone, and she's like, Erin, remember to ask them. I'm like, ma'am, excuse me. I'm like, I do not need help. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I asked her, I was like, oh, do you want me to drive the other day? She goes, yes. It's telling me turn by turn. I said, why am I driving? I said, why? If you were gonna do this, why am I driving? Like, but that's just how she is, and that's how I am. I am very much like, whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen, and she's very
now I'm
much
gonna
like,
cut her off because all this stuff is a revelation to me as far as her wanting to be like me, because
no, it's not.
yes it is. Because I mean it's nice of her to say I'm the smartest person she knows, but that's not really true. But I appreciate that, because the smartest person is down there on the end.
Well,
but anyway, that's also very
Please
true.
don't say that.
Well, Miss Sharon Ann is brilliant.
What did I tell you when I was like 12, Sharon? What did I tell you when I was like 12? I got my smarts from you and my
Oh, that's right. I remember you said that.
I'm talking. Let me go back to my part. Okay, so anyway, I didn't know any of that. Now, she says that being uncomfortable with herself, I was always kind of uncomfortable with myself as a kid, because I knew I was different. I was very strange. I thought strangely. I thought about things that other people didn't think about. I didn't know that at the time necessarily, because my mind was always someplace else. So it's not a surprise to me that she probably, and she might not know that about me, that she was uncomfortable with herself because of the way that I had always been. And sometimes I'm still uncomfortable because people will still look at me strangely. I just have a different kind of brain. So, you live and learn, you deal with that. That's just how it is. So I don't have a problem about that. But I'm taking this question a different way. I mean, she got kind of deep, but I'm taking this question a different way because when they said, how has your relationship evolved? I have to always tell everybody, I asked for her. I did, because we had 2 boys within about 15 months, and I just didn't want to be by myself. Now, I said I didn't want to be outnumbered, but I'm still outnumbered by 1, but I'm not by myself. And I will have to say, since we are being honest and all that sort of thing, sometimes, and I don't know how Miss Sharon Ann feels about it, but I'm grateful to the Lord. I know the Lord put her in my life and gave her to us. And he did, because when I asked for her, I got her. And I used to tell her, you have to cooperate with me because I asked for you. That didn't go very far. That didn't last very long, but I would try it. I did try it. But she is invaluable to me at the moment, being in the house with me and helping me as she does. But there's this little thing in the back of your mind. You don't want them, and I'm sure Sharon probably feels the same way, you don't want to feel that they are not living their life because they're helping you. And I know if they didn't want to, they wouldn't. But still, at the same time, since we are moms, you don't want them to put their life on the back burner because they're helping you. And she constantly assures me that she is not, and I know that that's probably the case, but there's still that little nibble in the back sometimes where, it's like, okay, Lord, I'm grateful, super grateful, because I wouldn't be able to do it. Because there's a difference between males and females, not in everybody's case, but males are just a little bit different with how they help. It's just a little bit different thing. And I'm looking at a lot of mother and daughter pairs where the mothers and daughters are together, and they're there for a reason. They're together for a reason. And so I just kind of wanted to say that, because she did take that a different way than I thought she was going to take it. But as far as, we, like I said, we've only had a couple of really tete-a-tetes, because one time I got really upset, and so I just didn't talk for a long time. I was cordial and all that sort of thing, but my feelings got really hurt by something she said one time, so I just had to work it out, because I didn't want to do, as I had been done a lot of times in my own life, that somebody was screaming and hollering at you all the time, and not talking to you and mad at you and all that kind of thing, because I didn't want that. And I would always say, do not holler at the kids, things like that. Not that sometimes, I didn't every once in a while, but I don't think I did too badly. I'm not sure. But I didn't want it to be a thing where it was just a lot of bad blood and bad things all the time. And just because they're kids, you can say whatever you want to say because that matters. And so I think we've always had a very good relationship. I think we've had to get each other straight sometimes. I think our kids consider themselves getting us more straight than we get them. But, you know, as far as grown, yes, we do. I give her space. I don't always understand her space, but I give it to her because, you know, that's just growth. That's just growth. She is her own woman. It's hard for me because she's gonna be 30 years old, and I just can't believe that, really. So I will probably still say, you know, don't forget to tell this person. But anyway, okay, that's us. This is us. This is us.
This is us. This is us. Yes. Okay, mommy, you go. How has our relationship evolved and your feelings and thoughts?
Well, I mean, probably when you were little, I mean, I just tried to provide you with everything that I could, you know, as far as like your clothes, your experiences, you know, just tried to make everything, you know, as nice for you as
And you
I
did.
could. And, you know, I think from early on, like hair, you know, the hair stories, and, you know, Leroy,
Some
and
LaRosa.
all that, you know, just, you know, we had a lot of battles after that, but, you know, I missed a lot of things as you got older that we, you know, found out about, talked to about. But, you know, and the education was another big thing. We wanted to make sure
Smart.
that you got the best education, you know, and, you know, that decision to send you, you know, to Christian school and let you go, you know, not go through public school was, I think, a good decision, you know, because it ended up, you were different through, you know, those years, and you know, you kind of took on the nature of the kids that you were with. You know, and Morris used to always say, "Why is she walking around with them no socks on, little short socks and tennis shoes? It's cold outside." So that's how they did. That's how they dressed. You know, and so you know, we used to laugh about that, but. You know, I know you didn't like me at one point when you were coming up, and I probably didn't care that you didn't like me.
You did.
But then, you know, you had somebody else that, you know, listened to you, because I did not want to sit in the wee hours of the morning and listen to you.
I love you, Dad. I love you, Dad.
Right. Listen to you talk for 2-3 hours at a time.
I did not talk for
Yes,
those
you
2-3
did.
hours at a
Yeah,
time.
you have, that had happened before because I went to bed. I went to bed, and I mean, you know, Mr. Spiritual could listen to me.
Don't do him. Don't do him. Don't do him.
But I just couldn't do it. But then eventually, you know, and then that kind of brings to mind why he used to always say, "Why are you always talking about stuff and leaving me out?"
Oh, yeah.
You know, he used to say that all the time because then we started talking more, but it was more things that, you know, the mother and daughter needed to talk about. But, you know, it all ended up working out because I needed you, you know, after, you know, everything, our new transition to life, you know, and it all worked out, you know. But you are not my mother. You try to act like, you know, bossing me around.
How I be bossing you?
Saying, you know, well, we're going to be doing this and we're going to be doing that now. And I'm like, what if I don't want to? But, you know, it's almost like everything is your way or the highway.
Okay, you sound like you talking to Daddy.
I'm just saying.
But see, the only thing we need to remember is whose house is it?
Right, and that's what
That's
I
all we
say.
need to remember. Whose house does it belong?
And that's what I say.
Okay, it is your house, but every time I be like, okay, I can leave, you be like, shut up. You're not leaving.
Coming from a woman who treats you like Cinderella.
For real, really treat me like Cinderella. Got all the cleaning supplies for me and Dad, but won't use every one of them. But you know, I appreciate you saying the things you said because, you know, you all definitely know, as my friend just said, who recently lost his mom, about being the president of the Mama's Boys Club. I am the CEO of the Daddy's Girls Club. And I am was very close to my father. And so my relationship with him, as far as like emotion and the conversation as a young girl, was always better than with my mom. I mean, at 14, I remember having a conversation with the both of them, like, I think y'all hate me and I hate y'all. It was something. I was just very emotional. And I remember it, and if I didn't say it, I was thinking it. But I do remember having a conversation in the kids' room one time. I mean, it was a nice conversation because it was the first time I needed to let them know how I was feeling. And like I said earlier, because I was struggling, like Em said, you know, with just a lot and trying to understand where I fit. And around that same time, my mom and I had a conversation, and I told her, I feel like you hate me. You know, I feel like you don't love me because you don't want to talk. You don't want to, you know, whatever. And that was the first time I ever saw my mother cry. I mean, Jesus was coming back because it was like, she never cries. What is happening? But it was the first time I realized, like, she really did care about me. But as Emmy, you said something earlier that was so good, which was, I had to understand who she was. Because like my mom said, and you hearing some of her clips, her story is crazy, you know, before Christ. And the things that made her who she is a lot of the reasons why she was the way she was in our relationship as mother and daughter. Even I saw between her and my father, you know, and it gave me a grace for her that I never had before as a child, because you do look at your parents like they're just superwoman, they're superman, and they cannot have flaws, they cannot make mistakes, because as a child, that's what you see. And like she said, I had the best of everything. My siblings always complain, you know, you got way more than us, you got to do more than us, but that's just what happens with evolution and when you grow as a parent. And you know, the youngest always gets, you know, better because your parents have grown, and it's like, it's important to talk about those things and, like Erin said, not hold it against each other, because people do that. And so I think for us, our relationship grew because of that conversation. And I remember I'd be like, well, you want to go shopping? And she'd be like, yeah. And at first, I knew I had to do things that she wanted to do or that she liked. And now, like Grammaw and Em said, we can really talk about anything now. And I mean, I go in and she'd be looking at me like, why in the world would you ask me that? Because I'm just not ashamed. Because I'm like, if we don't talk about stuff, you know, I won't know. I've already told them. I'm like, we just gonna have a Grammaw and Mom conversation. You know, because there's just things, you know, that we shy away from and different reasons. And it's like, as you get older, you have to create those spaces so that, you know, you're aware and you're not naive to things. Because there's a lot of things I have been naive to. And I made a lot of mistakes because of that. So I think with Mom, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful we have each other now, like she said, in the transition with losing my dad. That really, us being able to be together has been helpful for the both of us. I'm not just going to say for her, but definitely for the both of us. So, you know, I always tell young girls, I used to hate my mom. I had an interview with the young lady in my job, and she was telling me about how hard her relationship was with her mom. And I shared with her, and she looked at me like, I just never would have thought you would have had something like that. And I said, I have, you know, and that touched my heart because I was able to help her with my story. And that's what this is all about. That's what this whole conversation has been about, is really identifying your story, right? So that you can then help other people. So I think all of us in some way or another have been weird, odd, quiet, introverted, you know, but there's a reason that we have had the experiences we've had. And that's why it's so important, ladies, that we talk to each other, especially as mothers and daughters, and not take that for granted, because there's people that don't have their mothers or people that don't have their daughters anymore, and you shouldn't take it for granted. And I always tell people, even if you're going through a rough space, try to find some grace, try to find something, because once they're gone, that is different. Life is totally different for you. And I can only say that as far as my father, because I still have my mom, but I, understand, like, your life does change. So I am grateful for these ladies.
And I was just going to say, both of us don't have our mothers.
Right.
And so that is something, after it's almost 40 years, that you still kind of think, wish your mother was still here.
Yep.
Just to say, a few words.
Right.
To,
Right.
So.
Right. And you would think that when people see their friends or lose their mothers and all that sort of thing, that it would kind of speak to people and bring them closer. It doesn't always happen that way, but it should, because everybody should think, when somebody buries their mother or father, you still have yours, be grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Call them on the phone, be nice. Just don't act the way you normally act, because you're not always going to have them.
I think it's also important to remember that it isn't always about somebody like physically being gone, because some people have mothers that they see and there's nothing between them, because that mother may have put that child through a lot, and that child grew up without them, or that's something that with my friends and with some of the kids that are younger than me, sometimes I try to remember that. I'm like, it's hard, because I do have my mom, and not only do I have my mom, we have a good relationship. I've grown up with her. She's done everything she possibly could for me, all of those things. It's incredibly important to remember that that is not normal anymore. It isn't normal to have such a good relationship with your parents. It is now almost a novelty to be able to say things like that. And so I try to be extremely aware. And I say this all the time. My mom is everybody's mom. She just becomes that. People know my mom without me having to introduce my mom. My mom can walk in someplace and they're like, "Oh, Erin, that's your mom." I'm like, they've never seen my mom before, but they automatically know that she's my mom. But I think that, and I say this a lot, a good mom is a mom to everyone. A good friend is a friend to everyone. A good whatever is that to everyone, because it's something that is important to you. So you then become important to other people. So I do think that sometimes it is important, because those people can sometimes feel left out. The people that are like, well, my mom is here, but she essentially isn't my mom, So I think that too, that can sometimes be even more painful. Death has a finality to it, but someone who's still alive but is almost missing in a way, that can sometimes be a little more painful, because you have no idea and sometimes seeing them all the time makes it more painful, because you're like, how could you not treat me as a mother or father or whatever should? So I think that's super important to remember too, for those people that may have a parent or guardian living but doesn't have that relationship with them. And for them, it is just as important. Like, you also need love and support, and just because they're alive does not mean that you're not doesn't mean that you're not struggling. That's basically what I wanted to say.
I think that was great. So I hope you all have enjoyed this couch session. This has been really, really fun. I hope you all enjoyed yourselves, and we got to kick this off. And so stay tuned for next week's video, and I love y'all. Peace.
Bye.